Let's turn to West Asia now, where Israel's war on Gaza continues. It's now day 136 of the fighting. Most of Gaza has been flattened by bombings. Just one safe haven remains, or a relatively safe place, the southernmost border town of Rafah. But maybe not for long. Israel is preparing for a ground operation in Rafah, and that could be deadly. Around 1.7 million Gazans have been displaced by the fighting. Most of them now live in Rafah. It was supposed to be a no-fighting zone. Western countries tried to keep it that way. Earlier this month, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Israel. He tried to prevent the Rafah offensive. Then last week, ceasefire talks resumed. Israel and Hamas were negotiating indirectly. Qatar and Egypt were the mediators. They were talking about a ceasefire. Their goal was to stop the attack on Rafah, but no luck. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has decided to go ahead. He says even if hostages are released, Rafah will be attacked.
Even if they do it, I can't tell you, according to Hamas' delusional positions, it doesn't seem that close. But even if we make it, we will enter Rafah. There is no substitute for absolute victory, and there is no way to achieve absolute victory without eliminating these battalions in Rafah, and we will do it.
Do we have a timeline? There hasn't been an official announcement, but most Israeli leaders have hinted at Ramadan, the holy month of Islam. It begins on the 10th of March, so chances are Israel will attack next month. What happens then? First, Gazans were asked to leave the north, so they fled to Rafah. Now Israel is saying, leave Rafah as well. So where will these people go? Further south in Egypt's Sinai Desert. But will Cairo welcome them? That is the question. Well, there is some activity on the Egyptian side. Concrete walls are being erected. Apparently, the plan is to build a refugee shelter, a place where Gazans can stay temporarily. Of course, Egypt has not admitted to any of this plan, any such plan. Their official position is, we won't take any Gazans.
It is not our intention to provide any safe areas or facilities, but necessarily, if this was a case and a situation, we will deal with the humanity that is necessary, and we will provide the support to the innocent civilians if that was to take place. But that should not be construed as an encouragement or an acceptance for an eventuality of this nature.
An attack on Rafah would be a major escalation. A, the casualties would be massive, and B, it would endanger Israel's peace deal with Egypt. Both sides normalized relations in 1979, Egypt and Israel. It was the first Israel-Arab peace deal. If it unravels, it would be a major setback. So Netanyahu needs to be careful here. Even his allies are losing patience with him. Joe Biden says Israel's war has gone over the top. EU, European Union members say an attack on Rafah would be unconscionable. Yet, Netanyahu is going ahead. And why is that? Because the war is keeping him in office. Polls show that most Israelis want him out. If elections were to be held today, chances are his party would lose. He was asked about elections over the weekend, and this was his response. I suggest we don't concern ourselves with that during the war. The last thing we need right now is elections. That's what Netanyahu said, but his party leaders are thinking about it. They say Netanyahu will be out after the war. Is that why he's extending the fighting? To cling on to power? Well, it's certainly possible, because more fighting doesn't help Israel. It reduces the chance of rescuing hostages. It radicalizes Gaza's population further, and it also turns the international community away from Israel. In fact, it's already happening. Countries in the global south are taking on Netanyahu. We've seen South Africa do that. They sued Israel. Now, Brazil is comparing Israel's war to the Holocaust.
What is happening in the Gaza Strip with the Palestinian people has no parallel in other historical moments. In fact, it did exist when Hitler decided to kill the Jews.
Many would say that's crossing a line. The Holocaust has very few parallels in history. The scale and suffering is incomparable. Having said that, you get the drift. Some 29,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Over 12,000 of them are children, plus 85% of the population has been displaced, so Gazans are suffering. Yet the comparison to Holocaust does make you flinch. Netanyahu called it disgraceful.
Today, the president of Brazil, by comparing Israel's war in Gaza against Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization, to the Holocaust. President Silva has disgraced the memory of 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis, and he's demonized the Jewish state like the most virulent anti-Semite. He should be ashamed of himself.
The next few weeks will be crucial. A lot depends on Western support, especially support from the United States. We've seen some half-hearted criticism from the White House, but in practice, nothing has changed. The United Nations Security Council will soon vote on another ceasefire. Washington has hinted at vetoing it. Same with military aid. Biden is seeking almost $95 billion in funding. 14 billion of that is for Israel. What does that tell you? Biden's words and actions do not match. And neither do Netanyahu's. He promised to protect the civilians of Gaza. He said they would be safe in the south. Well, safe to say, neither promise has been kept.